Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast, season 2. I'm your host and producer, Danielle Turchiano, and if you're watching on YouTube, this little guy on my shoulder, that's Archie, the real Mr. Archie on Instagram. If you're not watching on YouTube, this is a really good reason why you should be, because right now you're probably assuming I have a parrot or some other bird on my shoulder. But no, it is my dog. He's just doing backpack. Anyway, this is the podcast where I invite guests to come share stories from past and present pop culture that is greatly shaping them. And normally I'll dedicate one episode to one guest, give them the whole hour, let them talk about their influences. This week, a little bit different, we have a twofer. ATX TV Festival co-founders and co-presidents Caitlin McFarland and Emily Gipson. Now, they just announced some pretty big deals for season 14, programming, pitch competition, lots to talk about. But of course, we're going to get into their past influences as well. And as you might have guessed, yes, their influences are TV related, but no, they are not the same. So check it out. Kate, Emily, welcome to Made Possible by Pop Culture. Thank you for coming on. Obviously, we're all TV lovers, so we're going to talk TV today.
We're excited. Our favorite subject.
Right. So I don't want to make either of you feel first or second. I've never done one of these yet with more than one guest at a time. And so normally I always ask, let's start with the first pop culture influence in the past. You're two different people. You have two different influences. We're not pretending that everybody's sharing a brain. Who would like to go first? Let's start that way. Who wants to talk about their
Based
love?
on your own rule, my influence is older than Emily's influence.
Yes, great.
I was going to say that your influence is older, so you should go first.
I was hoping that's what we were going to say, but I didn't want to set it up like, okay, it's going to go first. And then Emily's over in the corner being like, why? Why did she get to go first? Okay. So what I always like to do, everybody who listens every week knows, I ask you to set it up because I feel like your love of it is going to set it up better than my explanation of something, even though I think we share a love of this maybe for different reasons. Okay. You go ahead and set it up, and then we're going to chime in with some questions.
My influence is I Love Lucy, and it is kind of all of I Love Lucy, if we're being honest. But because you wanted us to be specific, it was interesting to think about which is my favorite. And it is the whole season where it's season 4, where they go to California. It starts as a road trip. Gotta love a road trip. But the season in California has a lot of old movie stars. It's very much part of movies and TV. I really was raised in a pop culture family. And so it kind of touches on a lot of different things. And I think if I look back on picking that is also very different journey than my own. But I went to California. I wanted to work in film and television. I wanted to know some famous people or hobnob and see what that world was like. And Lucy's interactions with all of them is obviously hilarious. So yes, that is my influence. And it, I think, truly did influence me in ways that maybe I hadn't really even thought about until you asked.
I would say that's why we're doing this, because I'm going to make you think about it now. So I Love Lucy was out in the 1950s. Obviously, none of us were born in the 1950s. So this is one that I love that you picked, because there have been instances on my podcast where people have come on and they've picked things that I hadn't seen at the time that it was first new, but they had. And so it was their love of it stemmed right from the beginning. In this case, I feel like none of us saw it when it was first new. So tell us a little bit about when you first found it. And was this season your entry point to the show, or had you been watching all the way along?
That's really hard to tell because it is such a ubiquitous part of my childhood. And I honestly can't tell you what the first was, other than it was probably my dad and I watched a lot of television together. My family watched a lot of TV together. I'm the person that watched, soap operas with her grandmother in the summer, and, Friday night, Cosby shows and things like that with my parents. It has to be Nick at Night. And later it was TBS. I actually have VHS that when TBS would do I Love Lucy marathons. And we would have VHS tapes where it would just record all day. And so I don't have them anymore, but I used to know all the commercials and made the I Love Lucy pink, the opening credits, they colored it. And I mean, I can remember being in like eye doctor offices and it would come on TBS, but it has to be a Nick at Night TBS combo. And therefore, I cannot imagine I watched them in order. I
Mm,
can't imagine, like, I have now, I've both the DVDs and I've watched them on Paramount Plus because they're all there. Um, and it is amazing how many times I've watched I Love Lucy, in my opinion, especially since, like, I'm pretty sure average is 30 episodes a season. Um,
yes.
and
They did
there's
a lot. And I mean, also, I think when they aired them in the syndication, in their like reruns, I'm not sure that they aired them all in order anyway. But if you go
imagine.
back now and you look and you really divide it by the traditional seasons, I mean, it was about 30. And I mean, I think that was common
Yeah,
for
Dick Van Dyke was.
years.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So I have now watched there are definitely I have seen every episode. There are definitely episodes that still come on where I'm like, wow, I don't really remember this one as
Mm,
much. The most popular ones are my least favorite. Like the candy
oh,
episode, I don't that is not mine. Maybe because it's like so you like so popular, it's like so overdone for me in those
sure.
ways. Like truly California first and then Europe. But I also like love to travel. And so seeing them go places as a group and like do various things was like very fun for me.
Okay. Wait, so chime in for a second. What was your experience with I Love Lucy?
I grew up always knowing what it was, but did not grow up in a pop culture household. So we did not have the TV on all the time. And we had shows that we watched, but not on the regular basis. And so old and classic shows I would catch at random times and like old Nick at Night and that sort of thing. But grew up very much knowing who Lucille Ball was as this entity. But I mean, definitely have not seen the entire series. And honestly, I've probably really seen the famous ones that Kate doesn't like
Okay.
the most. And that
Fair.
I'm very familiar with what the show is, but not necessarily the seasons or the specific episodes.
Well, part of the reason I'm asking is because influence, when I use that word, can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So, in the terms of like season 4 was the season you picked, Kate, because you said it was your favorite. How much of that is Lucille herself and like what she was doing in the industry as an actor, as a producer, versus the actual storylines that were maybe influential or even inspiring, as you said, like you would
Yeah.
eventually come to California?
Yeah. That was later that I learned that. Like my dad would give me like books and things like that, but I definitely was the kid. Like I loved various historical people, especially women in entertainment. I ended up doing a college thesis on like female directors and like studio heads and like United Artists and like all of that kind of thing. So Desilu and the fact that
Mhm.
she made shows and her and Ricky did that together and the various things that they established as both on screen and behind the camera talent and how powerful they were. And then later, I think the thing in television that has I still talk about all the time is like how influential I Love Lucy was to the country,
Mm.
uh, in the sense that it was even referred to as, did you watch the show last night? And it was like people would know what show you were talking about, or like the idea of product placement, like refrigerators that they had. And Gloria Calderon Kellett has told us what uh, Ricky meant
Mm.
to Cubans and how
Right.
that the most popular person on television was a Cuban and an immigrant, like was a huge deal for the US at that time. And probably need it now. Like, so
Yeah.
just the influence of the show, and then later to find out how much influence Lucy had on that herself and was not just an actress on
Right.
screen. She was really like leading the charge. That came later. I definitely in the beginning was just entertained by it. And it shocks me today how many times I've seen these episodes and how much I still laugh at them
Mm.
and how just like timeless, in my opinion, they are. It'd be interesting, Emily, for you to watch like not
Mhm.
famous ones and things like that and see how much you like giggle because I think it's so, yes, it is set in the 50s and there are things that don't happen anymore, but there is so much that is just like husband and wife like things or friend things. The ladies, Lucy's like little lady group and her and Ethel's bickering is always like really fun. But so actually I thought what you were asking at first was how much is Lucy the character, like what I
Well,
like.
you can also interpret it that way if you want
No,
to talk
but
about
I was
one
going
of
to say
the you
is
said
that
favorite earlier. So one of the
yeah,
things I was going to ask you too is like the favorite episode, the episode you think M should watch. And maybe that has more to do with Lucy as a character.
gosh, that's so different and hard.
I'll take homework.
Uh-huh.
That's mostly what this podcast ends up being.
Yeah.
At the end of it, I'm like listing all the things we talked about and where people can find them to watch them.
I
And I'm
mean,
like,
I actually,
happy hunting.
I do think because I actually don't think most of them are that the most famous ones that like watching season 4 is
Right.
maybe kind of a cheater because like it is them like leave. Emily and I took a road trip from New York to Los Angeles. That's how the season starts. Like they get a new car and they go to LA and like they both have the road trip episodes and then it's her meeting like various famous people. I mean, I guess probably one of the more famous ones in that season is the Groucho Marx
Yeah.
episode that is still very funny. But I mean, I like the Richard, they're all the like, who's the famous person, like the Rock Hudson episode or
Mm.
Richard Widmark. And like, it's just all these old Hollywood haunts but that whole season is like, it was funny. I did not rewatch them on purpose to just like know because I
What do you
wanted to
mean? Like right now before
like
this?
right now. Yeah.
Oh,
Like
okay.
in the last couple of weeks, I did not rewatch them in preparation for the podcast because I wanted to know what I just remembered and like
Okay.
sort of felt. But I did Google today to make sure I was right that it was season 4. And
I
I
mean, I
was
would have
like,
told you if you were wrong.
yeah. And I was like, ugh. And a Smithsonian thing came up that said that like in season 3, the ratings started to dip, and
Mm.
the one of the major producers thought that it was because like we've just been in New York for so long
Yep.
and people are tired. And so they sent them somewhere else to like revitalize the show. And like that's how the conversation started, was like get them out of the New York apartment. And so like I'd never really thought of like why did they go to California? But it is just like they had access. It was like maybe no, I'm not gonna say it's like the first stunt casting, but like the whole season is like
Well, I mean,
such
there's,
famous
yeah.
people.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the season to me felt like they were at a height of, you already said, influence, but also success and popularity within their own community in Hollywood that I'm sure a lot of these people wanted to come on. Maybe
Right.
didn't think they'd come on as themselves, but ended up coming as themselves. But also the season got more self-referential about Hollywood. Like you were just talking about product placement. They did that whole episode where they were hired to do basically a commercial, like we're
Mhm.
in the home and we're husband and wife and we're talking about how great
Yeah.
these things are, and Lucy thinks it's just a dress rehearsal, so she messes it up on purpose type of
Yeah.
thing. And I think like that said a lot about me. Okay, I will say I didn't know that the Smithsonian thing, that they were like you should get out of the apartment, but in my head that's what a good writer would say. No
Yeah.
matter where it comes from, the note is, okay, how can we mix it up for the
Yeah.
new season? You guys, I would love to hear about your road trip because like that sounds amazing. But that also part of it, that part of the season too, like there's a whole episode that, well, there's many episodes on the road, but there's one episode where they have to pull over and they have to get these like accommodations for the night. And to me, that episode could have been a horror movie. And so like even they weren't really playing with the tone, like they kept it very light and it was very much still, we're playing everything for laughs. But I felt like it was taking a little bit more of a chance on like the
Yeah.
story. So, um, I mean, I don't know. I feel bad that I made you that I'm saying like pick a favorite episode, but
Well,
also
it's only because, so you should know, like, short background is that when we started this festival, Emily and I still get asked, like, what's your favorite TV show? I
right.
appreciated the question was most influential, but because I was
Yeah,
like,
but then you use the word favorite. So now
I
I'm
know,
I'm stuck on
I
the word
did.
favorite.
Well, and it's because we were asked that a lot. And when we get to Emily always had one. She like, it was no question. This was her favorite show. And for me, I was like, oh my gosh, you have to give me like decades or times in my life or categories. Like I can't do it with movies either. I have to have like a handful of them. And over time in those interviews, I did end up always just saying I Love Lucy because is the show that it is such comfort food for me, like
Mm.
more than anything else. And I do have others, like Friends is on that list. So is Dick Van Dyke. Like I definitely have other comfort movies and TV shows, but I Love Lucy, like the music like makes me feel good in a way that like, and it's very short, but like it like in my chest, I feel just like a lightness and I feel like young again, like that
Mhm.
kid sitting in front of the TV for that long.
Yeah.
Like it is so imprinted on me in a way. I love Dick Van Dyke, but that music I love does not do what the I Love Lucy theme song does. It's like I don't know that anything else does that, which is how I got eventually to this is my favorite show. And it was
Right.
just easier to say and it's less complicated, but it took a while to figure that out, funny enough.
Yeah, but I think also then looking back and like picking on the things that you picked on in terms of like why, the why behind it. Like, yes, the music is one piece of it, but then also like seeing the parallels later.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were subconsciously influencing your decisions later or not, just being
Yeah.
able to look back and see parallels and like see a blueprint for what a Hollywood production could or should be.
Also, women in that writer's room, or a woman, Madeline, was in that writer's room along with
I mean,
it was
I would say
very
it's
small,
not many, but then again, at the time, that was a lot. And
like
honestly, today, still a lot,
a lot. But it
unfortunately.
was a very small room. Like it was always written by like one of three people, felt like most of the time. And her name was on it all the time. And I thought that was cool. It
Yeah.
took a while to notice that as like an 8-year-old. I wasn't like, not like it
No,
was my
I mean,
name.
I say it all the time. I still don't really read the credits, and
Yeah.
I've worked in this business for how many years? But I'm like, when it's like a thing I'm working on, I'll read the credits. Like if I'm
Right.
doing an interview, I'm paying attention to who did what.
Right.
Um, I do want to pivot over to M for a second. So because you set her up to say like she always had this as her favorite, but it is influential. So set it up that way. Why was this influential? And again, the specific of it, and then we can go a little bit broader.
Okay, so I mean, it is my favorite, but it is influential, and I loved having to take a minute to think about when I say minute, like a few weeks before I actually got you, which was
Yes.
what episodes I was going to talk about because diving in, I'm like, I can't just do the whole series. What do you mean?
No,
A
that is
month,
its own. And I will
I
say, I
know,
give these
fully, fully.
parameters on purpose. Like when Kate came in hot with like season 4, as because I said be specific, because somebody else could come on and also want to talk about I Love Lucy, but want to talk about the Candy episode. And I want that to be okay. It's really like this is all what was the most important piece for you. And if the whole series is important, distilling it down to the why, like it's usually
Yeah.
a character that you relate to or a particular arc or something.
So mine is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Um, just in brief history, I did watch it when it was on. Buffy was a year older than me in school, so watched it in high school, very much was obsessed. It was very much a Tuesday nights. All of my friends knew if you were going to come over to my house, you got there before 7 or after 8. And there was no talking during Buffy. The amount of fights I had with boyfriends during that time period where I'd be like, there's absolutely no talking during Buffy. You can talk at commercial breaks because we had those then, but this is what we do. And if you're going to talk, then you can come afterwards, and that's fine. But there were very strict rules. Everyone knew that. I was obsessed with this show um all 7 years. And even the ups and downs of it, I loved every second of it. And it was very much like drawn into, I think I always wanted to be tough. Like I always like she was so tough, but she was so also dealing with all the problems I was dealing with the boys and the
Sure.
friends
Yeah.
and the school and all of those things. And I love the concept of double life. Like those are still
Mm.
just the overall things. Like I love double life stories, hidden identity stories. Um, so that's just like the overall, I just deeply loved everything about the show. The episodes that I picked, I want to be clear, are not my favorite episodes. So
Okay.
these are
Well, so
favorite.
you started. Oh, you go ahead. I don't want to cut you off because
I mean, you can,
no, because you just in my prep, I'm gonna say this for the
yeah.
audience. I didn't watch Buffy when it was originally on, not because I wasn't around, but because I never really liked supernatural stories. Like the opposite of you, like you like the double life. I was like, I like the high school. Well, that's not even true. I didn't really like stories about high school in general, but like I like the stories about life, about like dealing with family and boyfriends and whatever. And then you threw in the vampire, and I was like, nope, no longer believable. Bye bye. So that's me. And I have seen episodes through the years, but I hadn't seen any of the ones that you picked. So now that I've said that and made everybody on the internet really mad at me, go ahead and set up what you picked and start with, I guess, because you picked a few that were like not consecutive. And so I
No.
need you to explain why you picked what you picked as the total, if that makes sense, because I watched them and was like, I guess I see some through line, but I'm not sure what it was that spoke to you.
Well, and it's funny, and again, because they're not my favorite episodes necessarily, although the first one is the season 2 finale, which honestly, if you've seen any Buffy, I'm surprised you haven't seen the season 2 finale. It is,
I don't know why. I mean, the one that sticks out the most that I've seen is obviously the musical.
yep.
I mean, I honestly I don't know why I hadn't seen this one either, because when you asked, I was like, you said you phrased it as it's the one where she kills Angel, and I was like, yeah, I haven't seen it. I don't know
And
why. I just haven't. I
that's
don't.
most shocking.
I wish I was on the 3 shot because Kate was making a face at me. That was
It was a
good,
very
but
big moment.
I know.
It's like one
And
of the most
I've seen clips
iconic.
of that moment, like because it's such a big moment in pop culture. Anyway, sorry, I keep interjecting. Go ahead.
Well, it's basically, and I picked that episode to start because it is the episode that I feel like I love seasons 1 and 2. Some people are iffy on season 1. It's finding its footing. And then people really fall in love in season 2. But that episode is when everything fully comes together. And in watching it, it is everything that Buffy is. It is funny. It is heartbreaking. It is the friends. It has some of my favorite scenes. I love the scene when Joyce, Buffy's mom, finds out she's the Slayer. And
Mm.
there's beautiful like moment. And it's funny watching it as an adult. I've seen this show many, many times. Oh, since I was a teenager up until now in my 40s. Like I've seen the whole show many times. And it's funny watching it along the way. And even in high school, I mean, I was that teenager that my mom and I were really close. But we had the year that we did not get along as I was a teenage girl and was
I
just
mean, at least it was only one year.
When
it
I
was
was
pretty much
16.
1 year.
16.
It was
Exactly.
And it
Same
was
thing.
around this time, and that scene where Buffy's literally like, Mom, I'm the Slayer. And Joyce is so hard trying to understand what her daughter is telling her. But at the same time, is like, the police are after you. I don't know what's going on. You can't just tell me this thing. And then storm out the door. And you're also looking at Buffy, who's literally looking at her mom going, I have to go save the world. Like, you cannot stop me. I have to go save the world. And Joyce saying, you have to tell me something. You're my daughter. And Buffy looks at her and she's like, how many times have you washed blood out of my clothes? And then
Right.
she has this line that's just I wish that I was upstairs gossiping and I wish that I was even studying. And it's just this heartbreaking moment where you see the weight of the world that is on her shoulders, which is what the show is. And I love that moment so much because it just all comes together. And then, of course, you jump to the next scene and you basically have Spike, who Buffy and Spike are teaming up for the first time. And there's just such comedy rolled into it as well that you're laughing, you're crying, you're not really scared of this episode, but kind of breath held. And it's hitting all of those beats. And then you get to, I mean, I could talk about every scene in the episode, but I won't. But you get to the end where she actually has to kill Angel. And it's how can you break someone's heart so much that he has been a demon for anyone that has not seen the show. He has turned bad. He is Angelus, not Angel. She's been fighting him the second half of the season. He's basically opened the portal to hell. Yes, this is a typical Buffy
I just
episode.
would like to say that you said you split it out that he is a demon and now he's turned bad. Like normally we would just say he's a demon, he is
I know.
bad.
I
Anyway,
know. He's a vampire, but he has a soul until the middle of season 2. Whole other thing that someone else may talk about at some point. But now he's the bad version of himself, and he has opened the portal to hell. The world is going to be swallowed up. And right before, the only way to stop it is for her to kill him. Heartbreaking enough. This is the love of her life, even if he's bad. But then right before she kills him, he gets his soul back. So that split second, she still has to do the hardest thing she's ever done and basically kisses him, tells him to close his eyes, and then stabs a sword through his heart. And it's like everything, every emotion rolled up into one, especially as a teenager when when you're at the height of all the emotions. And I feel like it's even, I can go on about this for hours, but taking like 2 steps back when they're fighting before
Mhm.
he gets his soul back. It's just the two of them. They're fighting, and she at one point loses her weapons, and she's kind of not cowering, but she's like in on her, like sitting down. He's walking towards her. He has the sword, and he's basically like, in his evil voice, like, you have no friends, you have no weapons, you take it all away, what's left? And
Mhm.
she closes her eyes, and he swings the sword at her, and she claps the sword and opens her eyes and just says, me, and then throws it back at him. And that moment of in life, and especially as a teenager, that you have these friends and you have your family and you have all of these things, but that kind of not loneliness, but feeling of like you're just on your own. And at sometimes you can be surrounded by all these things, but sometimes you really, it's like up to you and on your own. It's that thing that resonates. So you're like, I
Mhm.
get that. I get that. Like, I'm by myself and I have this huge support system, but it's the end of the day, it's only me that can make changes and do things. And then the fact that she has to save the world.
Well, and the fact that she can save the
And
world.
the only thing that she
Like you
can, and that
can
she does.
rely on yourself. Yeah.
And she makes the hardest decision ever and does that.
Kate, I want to flip this to you for a second because I'm curious, having heard all of this. Same question that I asked Em earlier, like where were you with Buffy at this time?
I was also, I don't, not this big of a fan. But it was like a very important, it was, I believe, a show, yeah, that I watched with my mom, actually. I also love the movie, which is very different, very, very different. But Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie was one of my first, like, probably way too young, like, sleepover movies
Mm.
with my friends. And so I was aware of the title by the time the show came out, and definitely watched it through. I was trying to think what the years were, because I do remember when Emily and I became friends, like way before we started the festival, we both worked at Fox. And the Buffy the Vampire Slayer DVDs were
Yes.
in the gift shop.
Yes. Oh,
And
I
Emily,
thought you were going to say you like took them from somebody's
no,
office
no,
and
no,
didn't
no,
pay
no,
for
no.
them
They were
because
in the
that's what
gift
I
shop,
would have
and
done.
I basically realized I hadn't finished the show. Like
Mm.
that because I would have been Emily if she was 1 year older than you. She was 2 years older than me. So like I basically would have watched it in like my maybe sophomore, junior, maybe first 3 seasons, and then gone to
Sure.
college. I watched very different things in college because you had to like have somebody send you a VHS tape or like watch it in the lounge or whatever it was going to be. And I like just didn't finish the show. And so it was years later working at Fox, talking to Emily, favorite show, that I did go back and like watch it was one of the early TV on DVDs that I watched. And definitely still liked it, but had lost sort of all the things she's describing about like season 2. Like I was very invested
Mm.
in Angel, like this whole situation. I also really love Spike. Like Spike, I was like probably like an early crush. Like I just like really liked Spike.
Well,
But
that's what's so funny is that like as you were talking, Em, you weren't leaning into the Team Angel versus Team Spike, and I maybe mistakenly assumed both of you watching at that age would have been.
I was both, if I were being honest. Like I was very into Angel, and then later was very into Spike. I was not into Mark Blucett, but
I know, poor
We'll get to
Riley.
him because she did add
Riley,
I
episodes.
will get to him in a
She
second, but
added episodes with Riley, and at one point, I think she was just trying to get me to watch more Buffy. She like sent me the list,
I
and
sent her
I
the
was like,
wrong
"Wait, I gave you
episode.
the
how
wrong
many
one."
episodes did you pick? Because I did kind of just pick
3.
season 3. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
mean,
3.5.
there are no rules here, so
I was just curious
Well,
what we're going.
and I mean, I would say I'm mostly team Angel, but I just love when Buffy is independent. Like I love when she's just on her own and staying up for herself. Obviously, we all not a lot of us want romance and love the romance part of it. And so it's fun to watch these different iterations of her. Um,
I
but
I just need to turn you then to the Riley episodes that you picked because hearing you say what you just said, I need. I'm very
okay, well,
confused.
okay,
So
so quickly though, on season 3, because I picked season 3, episode 2.
yeah, I was gonna skip that and come back to it because of your train of thought about you
Okay.
were talking about her being
But
independent. But then the episodes you picked in season 4, she's very much with Riley and like blowing off her friends for Riley.
I know, and it's funny because I picked this episode. So in season 4, I mean, it all connects, but in season 4, I can't remember which episode number it is now. because I
Well,
got
the
caught
real one, the new man, a new
yeah,
man.
a
Yeah.
new man.
Okay. So
Is
that was
it,
episode 12. So it was like midway through. So it
yeah.
was year 2000. So it was like 2 years after the last one you picked.
Yep. So it's midway through season 4. People have a lot of feelings about season 4 and about Riley. But the reason I picked that episode was for a very specific scene. And it's the scene where she she has met Professor Walsh before, but Riley takes her into Professor Walsh, who is the woman that's in charge of the initiative, the commandos, all of those things. And there's a scene where Professor Walsh is asking Buffy, like, how, so you're the Slayer, we thought you were a myth, all of these things, and then saying how many, basically saying Riley has killed 17 hostiles or whatever they call them. How many have you killed? And Buffy has this look on her face of like, oh, he's killed 17. And you can tell this look on her face is completely like, I mean, I kill 17 a night, is what her feeling inside is. And then, and I love that scene so much because just the underestimation that she has always had, and that even this professor who's running this huge initiative to catch all these monsters, and that you're just being able to see that Buffy is so much stronger and smarter and more powerful than all these men, and that all of this tech and all of this thing that's happening. And then it cuts to like the next scene, she and Riley are walking on the campus, and it has nothing to do with like their relationship and longevity of their relationship, but the fact that he is very much like the way that she's talking about her history and who she is and how she got there and the types of fights she has. And she's trying to downplay it a little bit, but at the same time, he's also like kind of excited by it and excited by her and excited by her strength to the
Mm.
point that he's like, let's go battle. Like, how tough are you? Let's see this. And it's fun because he's not scared by it, and she gets to like really be strong and be herself, and she's almost afraid to brag about it, but then you see her a little bit coming more into her own and owning it and being excited about who she is in a way that she hasn't really been able to
Mm.
do with other people. And I just love that scene so much where Professor Walsh is like, he's killed 17, how many have you killed, in this like prideful moment, and Buffy's
Right.
like, I
I'm
can't do
glad. See, this is why I asked you guys to set all of this up because, and again, I watched this for the first time like last week as an adult, but you said to me, I'm picking it for that scene then. And so
that.
I watched that scene and I went, huh, I interpreted that scene much more as the downplay that you mentioned. Like I was so focused on how she was downplaying not just like her ability and the number of people that she'd killed, but like I assumed then for the maybe not the rest of the episode, but a little bit more into the episode at all, that was what she was going to be doing in this relationship. And so I kept like really honing in on like facial tics and nuances and being like, is this an acting choice? Is this on the page? Like I got obsessive about it because I was like, that to me is not who Buffy is supposed to be.
Mhm.
So I was excited when it like righted itself quickly, but I was just surprised in the initial
Mhm.
scene selection because of my interpretation of it. And so hearing you explain, you viewed it, I think, differently a little bit. Like I feel like you gave everybody a little bit more grace with how you viewed it than how I did, which says a lot about me as a viewer. And everybody who knows me as a viewer knows that. But that's why I like this because like even the scene with Buffy and her mom that you talked about, like you were so focused on Buffy's side of it and the pain on her face and like what she's going through and the weight on her shoulders. And I was so critical of her mom in that instance and being like, I feel like this scene is everything that like would have been a metaphor for how kids come out to their parents in the 90s. And this mom is doing everything wrong. Like she's saying things like, is this a phase? And the mom will come around because I read IMDb and I know she's in more episodes, but like I was so mad in that moment of like, can't you just give them like support, and just give them what they need. And that obviously, if she had, we would not have had the arc where she left and came back. So fine, but whatever.
At all, which then goes to the third episode, which is season 3, episode 2, a dead man's party, and it's when Buffy does come back from having disappeared for the summer, comes back. Everyone is being weird around her. Her friends, her mom, they're all keeping her at a distance. She's still dealing with the trauma of what she went through, and it feels like everyone's fractured. And so her friends throw her a party at their house, invite a ton of people she doesn't know. She's upset, maybe even going to try and leave again. And then there's this moment where they're all kind of yelling at each other in the middle of the party, and zombie-esque type monsters come crashing into the party. And they all immediately, it's my favorite part, they all immediately snap into fighting mode and they become a team again. It's an immediate, like, they've got each other's backs, they know what's happening, they know how to fight, and they see each other in this, like, oh, we've been so mad at each other, but we really are this like team and this unit. And it's also Joyce gets to see for the first time what it's like for Buffy to be who she is and what that means. And she starts to come and accept, oh, I'm starting to understand this. And I just love that moment of them all coming together because, you know, especially in high school and with friends, you have moments where you're really mad at each other, but then something happens and you're like, my friends are the only one that's going to understand this. And they're the only ones that are going to be on the same page. And that core group, the Scoobies and that core group coming together is just like so much part of the heart of the show.
You want to show her the Scoobies?
What? Oh, is there a visual for
I
everybody
have
watching
on my
YouTube?
wall.
Oh, that's cute. I forgot the artist. It's the like the cartoon isn't maybe an unfair word, but it's the animated album cover, but I forgot the artist's name.
I can't see it. Jen, our director of programming, gave me these for a gift many years
Very
ago.
nice.
I just love them very much.
Very nice. So, how for both of you, when you have a show that is this influential and then you've made TV your job, how many times do you go back and rewatch these things from like your earlier days? And can you stay as high level of fan, or do you find yourself with the experience of working in the business and working with people, if not the people that worked on these shows, but people like them? Do you feel like that starts to change how you watch at all? As I just said, as an adult, like I was critical of certain things.
See if I follow actually what your question was, because
I don't know. Sometimes I just ask three questions at
I'm
once.
asking because like what I was gonna say is the thing that I have become more and more obsessed is the wrong word, but like I feel more and more is like newer things, be it movie or television. Like I wonder how they get this level of fandom around them. Like obviously the longer something exists, the more fans it can get over time, but we are so fractured in all of the places we watch things.
Yeah.
So like even Friends, which was not as long ago as I Love Lucy, but where there's basic I Love Lucy's got 7 seasons of 30, I believe it's 7 seasons, about 30.
Yeah.
It's there's so much of it. When it was on, there were only 3 channels. It has now been on for 70 years or had been existing for 75 years, and you can still watch it. Like Lucille Ball is like iconic. And if there's the ability to do that anymore with like new things, because there's so many new things and we're in so many different places, etc. So my answer to your question is more the older things I do remain more and more loyal to because they just continue to imprint on me in deeper and deeper ways and get more a part of my being. So I've been watching it since I was 8. And I do still, like I said, I Love Lucy is like when I was pregnant, I put it on a lot. Like I might put it on again now that we're having this conversation, but like now that it even more so that it is on Paramount Plus and I can just like turn it on and just be like random. But and I've never met any of the people that made it.
Right.
So they can't like hurt me.
Oh, I wasn't even talking about it
No, I
in
just
that
mean
respect.
that like
but
there are other shows that I won't name
right.
that our job that I was a fan of pre this job that like you meet those people or those fans if we're and like it just sort of like changes
it.
and experience with it. So there are things that are more middle of my life viewership that were very important to me. And I do try to still hold on to them that in that moment they were important, but I can't rewatch in the same way, whether it is something tied to a human, like the actual person or the show itself. And so because TV is my job, I actually hold on more tightly to the things that made me love television. And it's actually harder and harder to have that feeling about something new. I don't know if that's also getting older. Like first loves are deeper than later. Like once my memories of those things are whether it's a pet or a person or like the firsts just stick with you in a deeper way. And I'm more and more fascinated, maybe obsessed is the wrong word, but with those feelings of fill in the blank, the
Right.
things influential to you or mean that much to you, and how open am I to those things I get older? Like how much do I let them in and let them like imprint on me? And I've had less of those experiences as I get
Yeah.
older.
I mean, I think that's common in the sense of like, I say this all the time on this podcast. The things that most people who come on to talk are picking are from their childhood. And so those are the years when just inevitably you are more of a sponge. And so whether you want to use the word it's your first or you just want to say like, my brain is still forming and it really, this cemented a place. Like I won't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday, but I can recap that episode or that I saw first 25 years ago, whatever. So I think that is a big part of it, but I think what also is a big part of it is what you all are picking, right? Like you're picking things that they've meant a lot to you, but they also have an important place in this landscape outside of you. They hold up in ways that there are certainly some things that I loved when I was a kid that if I watch now, I'm like, okay, it gave me something I needed then, but I don't hold it the same way now because it's not modern or, inclusive or whatever I'm looking for now.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like because for me with Buffy obviously in the past number of years has gone through, not Buffy, Joss Whedon has gone through a lot of scrutiny. And this conversation on separating the art from the artist and what can you still hold on to and what can you still love if the person that is behind it is not a great person, all of the things. But I think the one thing that has been so helpful in that, and especially because PS part of my influence of Buffy is Buffy was the first show. I'm not going to say that I knew the creator's name, but that I became super familiar with who Joss was. I knew who all the writers were. I knew who the directors were. Like I was very aware of the people creating the show with how much I loved it. And so really loving everything that Joss Whedon was putting out. The thing that has helped with Buffy is having Sarah Michelle Gellar be very vocal about the fact that she loves Buffy. She loved that she played Buffy. Everything that Buffy stood for should not be taken away from people
Right.
who hold it close to them because of some of the things that happen behind the scenes. And I think her coming out and being so vocal about that has given everyone else permission to also still love it,
Yeah.
which is really nice. And I appreciate her so much for that because I think if she was kind of shying away from it and not owning how much this character meant to her, then I think the rest of us would also be like, well, great, I can never talk about Buffy again.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it's hard because other actors on the show have come out obviously and said how hard it was for them. But at the same time, there are contingents of fans that don't do what you did, that don't look up who wrote episodes, who directed episodes. They don't maybe care isn't the right word, but that's not how they're consuming their television. So that's why I do feel like you should be able to separate those things to a degree. I think there are certain instances where it's just like, okay, that person is so terrible. If they belong in jail because of the things that they've done, that's a line.
I do think it's hard on any of the art that we're talking about, but television particularly, because not one person made that show.
No, that's very true.
So, like that, I will say we will not talk about it for very long. But the Cosby Show is very important to me.
Oh,
Like
totally.
it's very, very important to me, and I have not watched it since then. And I do believe that shouldn't be taken away from all the people who made that show.
Right.
And so that is where a lot of that conversation goes. Is like, what are we discounting from, if you want to call it art or just like the name pop culture, like culture, and that more than one person made that thing. So if you cancel that show,
oh, sure.
like,
That I wasn't saying cancel.
No,
that
I know you
show.
weren't. I know you weren't, but I think that's why that conversation
Yes.
is like you have to take in all of those pieces, but you don't want to say that like you can't watch this anymore because of one person's terrible thing.
Right.
I do think it is hard when it is somebody like, I mean, the Cosby Show, he's on the screen too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's his
you're
name.
looking at him versus like some of the other terrible people that might be a producer or something, and they're still terrible, and the experience might have been terrible, but all these other people, it was very important to them, and they also sacrificed a lot to make it. So it's just hard.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I also think that's its own special case because of what it meant at the time in like you said, larger culture. Like you didn't have a picture of a Black family like that. And so like that was very important. Unfortunately, I think he was hiding behind that and it was helping him get away with other things. But I don't think that means you should cancel the show. But I do think it's valid for people to say, I can't watch this anymore. So yeah, I mean, I'm not to take a hard left, but like I did want to talk about some of the fun people that you all, whatever, are excited to work with again because modern influences, present influences, you just announced some programming for the upcoming season 14. So I would like to go one by one. Do you have one piece of what is most, I don't know if influential is the right word here, or like most, I guess, personal to you for season 14 that you've announced so far?
well, only because I've caught glimpses of it on this podcast, but Henry Winkler is coming back to the festival. We gave him an award, our first award ever, Achievement in Television Excellence Award, and then he came back again for a Royal Pains reunion. But he is coming. We asked him over the years. We have kept in touch. And I actually have a tattoo in his handwriting. It says
Oh, I
tenacity.
didn't realize that was his handwriting. That's cool.
So after the very first festival, he wrote Emily and I an email telling us what a great time he had had and that it was our tenacity that like brought the festival to life. And years later, that just became a word that I responded to, and it is one of my words. And so I asked him to write it, and so I got it tattooed on me. But he really is what everyone says. He's one of the nicest men in Hollywood, if not the. And keeping in touch with him, like he sent my child a series of books that he signed and signed Uncle Hank. And like, I don't know him that well. Like all of this is like with all of these loving things is like, we've met him like 3 or 4 times. I mean, like, again, we gave him our first award and the best version. Yeah. And the best version of this was like on Emmy night, the night he won his first Emmy, Emily and I were at an event that he went to afterwards, and we saw him and we went to say hello. And we're always prepared to say, Caitlin and Emily, ATX TV Festival. And as we approach, he looks at us and says, without missing a beat, says, "You gave me one first."
Aww.
Right? And we both were like, oh. You've been in the industry for like 50 years and you just got your first Emmy.
Yeah, that also is crazy, by the way. No offense to you both, but that is crazy.
And on your celebratory night, this is what you say as we approach and you're surrounded by like he is just a gem of a human being. And I am so thrilled that he is coming back. He's doing what he deems an acting class with Henry Winkler. I don't even know what that is. I'm just excited for it.
Excellent.
And I mean, we're excited about everything, but I think the Leftovers reunion is going to be really incredible. I am so excited, honestly, to rewatch it, which I will be doing in the next few months. I loved this show so much when it was on. We all did, but like deeply, deeply loved this show and things that it was saying, what it stood for, the conversations it was having. I think the series finale is one of the best series finales. And the fact that season 2 was shot in Austin and surrounding areas makes it important to us and important to Texas as well. But I mean, Damon Lindelof has been such a supporter of ours and has been so fantastic to us. And then having Tom Perrotta and Mimi Leader back, and then a new slew of cast members that haven't been before. Have any of them been before?
Yeah, I was like Carrie Coon and Chris. I like that I know this.
I'm gonna answer.
I love it. Great.
Carrie Coon,
they came,
and Dowd, and Chris Eccleston all did a panel with Mimi Leader and Damon called The End when we did it.
Which was 10 years ago.
It was 10
I
years
should
ago.
have remembered that, and I did know that, but I just forgot. But yes,
Well,
10
and it's
years ago.
also probably we also co-hosted the season 2 premiere that was here in
Mm.
Austin, which none of them will know that we did.
Yeah.
Like, I did it with HBO. It was not during the festival. It literally was just like in partnership with HBO. And like they all came. But so like Justin has never been to the festival. Kevin Carroll, Amy Brenneman,
Well,
none of them.
Justin did the virtual, which I thought was
He
cool.
did. And we haven't, that was
Mhm.
maybe the very first COVID year, we did some really fun, it was when everybody was like, what's a Zoom? I can't go anywhere. Sure. And so we had
That's how I'm getting my guests. I
yeah.
mean, they can go places now, so.
But Ann Dowd and Justin Thoreau had a conversation, and to Emily's point, like the show we all loved. I was thinking, Emily, as you were saying it, like I think talk about recent years and what affects you. It definitely when it was season 2, 3, and the finale, I feel like we had more conversations about this show than like most shows. Like
Mm.
not even like debates, just like like true conversations and
Yeah.
deeper thoughts. At least amongst ourselves, like we watch a lot of TV at ATX Television Festival. Emily and I watch some of
Shocking.
the shows and a lot of different shows. So to be watching the same show and loving it and have it make us think and want to talk about those thoughts, I just think was really, really cool. And so I do, to M's point, like this is a special show for us, and this is one of the first times we doing it like this.
Right. I mean, I do think what you just said speaks a lot to the subject matter of the show, but I don't think it's necessarily unique to that show because I feel like the announcement, so those were two really big ones, obviously, with the announcement. Then there's another reunion with Unreal. That's another show that I feel like when it was on originally, everybody was talking about maybe having some debates about certain decisions that characters made. And then, looking at bringing Mike Flanagan back, bringing Bill Lawrence back. I mean, everybody that you were talking about, more or less. I mean, I count the virtual as having come to the festival. So everybody that you were talking about is returning, which I think is pretty cool. Like building the relationships. People want to invest in the festival and keep coming back. You say, we want you to keep coming back. We like you. We like the content, the art that you guys are continuing to give us. What, if anyone, do you feel like is influencing how you're doing things at the festival this year? Is there someone who's coming in and pitching you ideas that you're like excited to consider? This is not a plug for you to say me.
I don't know. I mean, there's a few, like for example, the casting panel that we announced, which is for, in my opinion, top casting directors in television. That came out of a lunch that Emily and I had with them where we love them. We love our casting panels. They had an amazing time this year. And specifically, it was a little bit like, what would you like to do? And they were like, we'd love to. They were talking. It was such a beautiful conversation. I liked them before, but when you hear casting directors talk about actors, I didn't realize like how much they like want them to do well. And so like one of the things, it was Bonnie who's casting the new Suits
Mm.
LA. And the first thing out of her mouth was, I get to hire so many people in Los Angeles. Like right now, post-strike, everything else, like there's so many out of work actors and I get to give them jobs. And
Yeah.
she like that was what was making her excited about this job. And so hearing them talk about it, realizing how much they love actors, the panel we're doing is them picking an actor that they don't think is recognized as much as they should be, and then unsung performer. And so getting them to have a chance to be like, you should pay attention to this person because this person's great. And I'm trying to, make sure that they stick around. I just think that that is really cool. But to your question, I think that a couple of reasons why this first announcement, which we're very proud of, and it's the first time since like pre-COVID, we've announced something like this at this time of year,
Mm.
is because we went to the people that had been before that it maybe hadn't been in a while. Like Bill Lawrence's panel, he had come for Scrubs a couple years ago, but
Mhm.
Bill Lawrence and Friends, the panel that we're doing, he did at the very first festival, like before we ever knew who he was. And he like reached out to us on Twitter, which was a very big part of the first year of the festival, and was like, "Can I come and bring some friends?" And I swear the day it was happening, we were like, "Who's coming?" Like, your friends. But we went to people who luckily in the last 14 years have also like continued to make television and
True.
like have resurgences in Bill's case and some other things that like we went to people to say, you know who we are, what would you like to do? And that might have been they came 14 years ago, or Mike Flanagan came for the first time last year and like understood who we were in a 24-hour period and was
Yeah.
like, I would like more of this. And then he pitched a bunch of things. We hope to be announcing some more things he's doing. But like we found our people and then we ask our people, what would be fun for you?
Yeah, which I think is nice because I think it allows it to be more of a relationship and a collaboration rather than what so many festivals are, which is just another arm of publicity, which is like your new show is premiering. You have to do this stop. You have
Right.
to do this panel. You have to do this red carpet. You have to do this junket room. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah. And our goals also, I mean, we do from the beginning, there's been a little more broader topics of like casting on TV or how to write a pilot or kind of the broader ones. And our goal is to have different spins on those every year. So part of this unsung heroes with the casting directors, but even as we dive into things like really looking at new ways into it. So it's not just let's have a panel on representation or let's have a
Mm.
panel on music supervising, but really finding fun topics so that it's not the same conversations year after year. And I mean, to Kate's point, like really asking our panelists that have come and seen how it works, what are you most excited to talk about? And who are you most excited to talk to? Like,
Mm.
we love asking our panelists, who is someone coming that you're really excited, and we can put you on a panel together and have like a cool conversation about really anything television related. Sometimes not, but usually
Yeah,
not.
I would say that feels like that would be chaos to me. I'd be like, oh my God, that scheduling that. Oh, okay. I'm getting insight into Jen's brain now.
Yes.
And then, I mean, obviously, also, maybe not obviously, for anyone local, they saw you on We Are Austin. And so they saw a little bit about you saying no red carpet this year. And I just brought up like the publicity arm where that is just a stop. But I always like to complain about it because it is a stop where everybody is trained with a few sound bites to give everybody on the carpet. And as a former feature writer, I did have to cover carpets from time to time, and I never felt like I got anything worthy as a member of the press. What went into deciding to say no red carpets? I'm assuming it was not because of things you heard from members of the press.
It was a combined nature. But the impetus for even considering the idea this year was really me actually having a conversation with some actors, some actresses, some female actors that started to explain to me the difference between being red carpet ready and just being on a panel. Because we were getting in a conversation about, look, as a festival, we are also a press stop. We use that to get networks and studios to bring us people. And we have over 100 press outlets and we love our press members and we want to be a place where press can get material and promotion can be had, but we also want to host people in
Sure.
a different way. And so the conversation which happened this summer was me asking questions because at first I didn't understand the difference between, well, you're getting your picture taken in the green room or on the
Mhm.
panel or, you know, candidly at parties. What's the difference between getting your picture taken on a red carpet? And they would say it more eloquently than I would, but they were talking about maybe the sound, like the kind of the gotcha, one, the
Yeah,
standards that are expected of them on a carpet, like from
right.
a beauty standpoint. So if they're, as they get older or different things, like the level of work that it went into getting ready for a red carpet. And part of that was photographers and cameras from every angle. Part of that was the stress of it and saying the right thing in this exact moment and then moving
Mm.
on and continuing, and that was a very different thing than talking to somebody in a green room, talking to
Mhm.
somebody on a panel, taking a photo backstage, taking a photo in front of a step and repeat, but with one photographer.
Mhm.
Those were all different experiences. And I had never thought of that. I thought, that people will be taking your photo, whether it's a fan or a press member. And so it's all the same. And so hearing them say that, we just sort of then went down the line in our point of press experience, our own experience on it. Honestly, like what we get out of it, which was not,
Right.
we're not the Venice Film Festival, show up on a boat. Like, there's like the
I
pomp
mean,
and
but here's
circumstance.
the thing. You could have people come down in horses because I was
Sure,
at the
we could,
festival last year. I was sitting outside of the state and all of a sudden these people on horseback just started riding down the
that
street.
does
And
happen.
the
That does
security
happen.
guard was like, I don't know what that is. And I was like, okay, fine. We're in
Yeah,
Austin.
it does happen. But like it just, we want to be a place that is like your living room, but like with a little
Mm,
bit of like, look, we are recording the panels. Like
of
it is a
course.
place that is public, but we want it to be a comfortable place. And we realize that I don't want to say that's an easy thing to give up because like I don't even know what the repercussions may or may not be from publicists or
Mm,
other people who want to get things, but like
I don't think
it
it's
felt
gonna
like,
be a problem
yeah,
because
it
of
felt,
all the things you just said. Like
yeah.
the things of value, no offense to the red carpet reporters, they're when they come to do a red carpet, they have a very specific thing that they need to get in the red carpet moment. But the longer value pieces, the more in-depth pieces are not coming out of the red carpet. So for you, for your talent, even for your publicist, I can't imagine like if they feel like they're missing anything, it would be the photo moment. But if you're giving them the photo moment somewhere else, they're not missing anything.
Exactly. So I'm actually really excited about it. I think we want to make sure, honestly, hearing you talk about the sound bites and the bigger pieces is like I think about as we are on a podcast and a longer form podcast,
Right.
that like the popularity of podcasts over the last few years and how even like late night shows that are not red carpet sound bites, but are a different type of interview
Sure,
and
yeah.
a joke, quick story, and how people are leaning more into the long form of it all. And I do think that's more who we are. Like that is the panel conversation. That is even the Q&A after a screening. A lot of people are like, that's like 5 minutes, right? I'm like, no,
Mhm.
it's like 45 minutes. Like we're going to have a conversation about your show. Like, and I think that that is more who we are. And therefore, I'm excited that we can think of the other places to get those moments for even the festival, whether that's, the social media suite where we can have, it will still be short and long form by any means, but more at the pace that somebody can have a conversation and not just be like,
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, I do think that is not the fault of your red carpet. That is just what red carpets have become,
Yes,
where
exactly.
everyone's like, we have to like, and it's partially the publicist's own fault because they get people there 5 minutes before they need to move inside. And it's like, well,
Right,
they'll talk to two people and they get one question each. It's like, what can we do with that?
right,
When you just need to put together a package for extra, that the whole
right,
package is 90 seconds, it's fine. But for anybody who's trying to do literally anything else, and this is,
right,
I'm going to get on a soapbox about journalism again, but like that is where it's nebulous to impossible. Um,
right.
Obviously, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. I don't know if you started to say, I think the word clickbait, and I was like, well, to be fair, that's not just the fault
Sure.
of red carpets. That comes from
Yes,
everywhere, but it is a
yes.
lot easier to control in other environments, I think. So, I feel like even the press that comes and covers you guys, like the ones that are coming to get access to the people, they'll get it somewhere else. They'll get it in the panel, they'll get it in an interview. Like that's more valuable than 5 seconds on a red carpet.
Mhm.
I don't know. But I'm glad to hear that like you heard it from talent and like you're again collaborating, working with them to make it something that is everybody is invested and everybody wants to do this because as somebody who's been coming to the festival for a million years and for everybody listening, I started by entering the pitch competition, which I do want Emily to talk about for a second after. And then I covered it as a member of a press and then I helped with social. Like I've just been everywhere for them because I full disclosure wanted to attend and not have to pay for it. And so as having that experience, you really see through the years, like the vibe hasn't changed. Like it's always been very open and friendly for everybody, for the attendees, for the talent, for the people working there, for the publicists who return and want to bring their new shows. And that is, as somebody who worked and covered a lot of festivals and conventions, that's not true of every place, because I think most places are more, they're operating more from like, this sounds bad, I don't mean it to, but like the business of it. Like we just need the top thing. How do we make that deal? And how do we get, like you said, Venice, like how do we get the top movies here, because we need the like splashy moments or whatever, and that thing may be terrible, but we're going to push it anyway. And that sets us all on a slippery slope, because when it premieres there and you're effectively stamping on it and it's bad, there are legitimate people in the press who are like, well, can I say it's bad? Not critics. Critics are honest, but other people are like, well, I should pay attention to it because it's in the conversation. And then it's in the conversation more than maybe it should be.
Right.
I'll get off my soapbox.
To your
Yeah, go
point on
ahead.
that real fast is that I feel that the thing, because of the magic that is in the walls of the festival, and look, we all want the loud voice that comes out of it. It's helpful to everyone. It's helpful to the shows, for the marketing and the PR. But what we are so focused on, and this is part of the no red carpets, is what happens within the walls of the festival and the people's experience. Because if people have an amazing experience, then like they'll talk about it, and that will be put out to the world for other people to see, because they'll share it, they'll want to write about it. And the amount of people that we talk to that go in and watch a screening of a show and maybe kind of like meh on the show, but then listen to the Q&A and
Yes.
like, I loved this conversation so much. These people are so great. I'm going to keep watching this show. I now have more insight into it. I understand what they're doing. I'm going to keep going and watching this show because of this experience. Whereas
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of other festivals, especially some flashy ones, if the movie is not good,
Yeah, because
then
they
that
don't
is
even
all that
get,
comes out of it.
yeah, you don't get a 45-minute Q&A. Like Kate said,
Yeah.
you 5 minutes, they stand there, they give remarks. We measure how long the ovation is. It's never the same on Variety as it is on THR, because people can't do math, which is not a dig. It's true. We are writers. We are not mathematicians. Leave us alone. But it's true. I mean, and that happened to me. I mean, it's happened to me. It used to happen to me a lot at TCA, honestly, where it was like the screener wasn't so great, but I want to hear how they answer their questions and if they have a vision or not. And it worked the opposite way too. I would full on be on set sometimes and be like, "Oh, you guys don't know what you're doing." Even though I loved what that first episode looked like, that was a miracle. This thing is gonna fail, and then they would fail. So, it works both ways, but I think it comes down to what you pick to put in your lineup and your programming in general. You're not picking the ones that
Mhm.
seem like they're going to fail because nobody knows what they're doing.
Well, it's part of even the discovery element that we talk about a lot, is the fact of like our panels, going back to putting people on panels, is so curated in the fact of, we know that there has to be, for lack of a better term, a splashy name or splashy show that's represented on a panel, but we're also going to put on smaller shows, up and coming showrunners, writers, actors, so that people go because they know something about one of the panelists, but they walk away being like, I'm going to watch all these other shows because now I've heard these people talk and I am drawn into them and want to see what it is that they're making. And we really are very careful about how we craft and put those together, because we watch a lot of TV and there's a lot of shows that we love and hear about, and we want, in this market that's so loud, we want to give
Mhm.
a place where those shows can be found.
Is there an example of that you guys have had where, like, even having worked on the festival and being involved in putting the thing together, listening to the conversation changed your mind about a particular show? Or maybe not changed your mind, but like solidified, oh yeah, I have to watch this show right now.
Euphoria. No. It was,
Wait, really? No, that's a great answer. I just couldn't tell.
I
You
mean,
said it in a way that I was like, are you being
it's
serious?
it's less actually. The part I'll say about it is season one. We premiered season one at opening night of the festival.
Yeah.
I don't actually remember, with the exception, because I'm not referring to, like, there was a weird moment in that Q&A where a child was in the theater and
Yes.
everybody was like, "Why are you here?
Yeah.
How did
Well,
this happen?"
Zendaya was a Disney Channel star.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that was a show we showed that I was not sold on the first episode, and I thought, like, this is not going to be for me. And I did like them so much, and we had premiered it, that I felt some affinity to it and stuck with it.
Mm.
And by like the third episode, like I was very into season 1 of that show. I can't fully say, just because of our own experience, like how much of it was the Q&A, how much of it was the experience of opening night, red carpet, Zendaya, etc. I do remember later being like, man, I really wish I had known that I was going to love these people this much. And I didn't. Like, I really loved Hunter Schafer and Barbie, and I had no idea who they were when they came to the festival.
Oh yeah, they were brand new.
I'm going to call him by his Grey's Anatomy name, but Mark Sloan was the thing. I was like, oh my God. Come on.
I think there are definitely shows that it's hard because, I mean, obviously at the festival, I mean, we are watching panels and watching Q&As post-festival because we can't be in all the places at once during it.
Right.
But there's a lot of shows that I have watched because they're coming to the festival, or have gotten excited about because they'll be there, or I've met someone that's been, around. Honestly, Mike Flanagan, I am a chicken and would never have watched any of those shows of his, but because we announced he was coming, I was like, he's coming. I need to watch some of these shows. So I watched Haunting of Hill House every morning at 8 a.m. with all the lights on for about 2 weeks so that I could watch it. Loved it. Great show. Still scared of it. But now, having met him, I want to watch more of his shows because I think that he's so fantastic. I am still scared of them. But
okay, that was that. I mean, that exactly
like,
was what I asked, though. Like,
yeah,
this is something you maybe would not have normally watched because you're not really interested in horror. You're afraid of horror. But now, having that experience, you're more open to it.
yes. And he's just fantastic. So we'll watch some of anything that he does, maybe like this, covering my eyes. But
Fair.
yeah.
I do, before I let you go, want you to talk a little bit about the pitch competition, Em, if that's okay, because for anyone, I don't know, I don't do a census of my readers, Jesus, my listeners. I don't, it's been a while. I don't know how many people out there are, budding writers, but I was not kidding before when I said that the first experience I had with ATX was that I entered the pitch competition. It was your year 2 of the festival, but I believe it was your year 1 of the pitch competition. And it's, at the time, it was you submitted a video pitch for an original scripted series that you wanted to see made, you wanted to make. And I advanced to the finalist round, and it was the most stressful thing I've ever done because you have to pitch. If you're a finalist, you pitch live in front of a live audience of like badge holders of the festival, just regular people, and then a panel of judges who go on to pick a winner. Obviously, it is advanced. The competition itself has advanced a lot since then. But I still feel everybody should enter it. So I want you to set it up a little bit. Tell everybody if submissions are open now, but tell everybody how it works today.
It hasn't changed that much, at least in the setup of it. But it is, I mean, we started it under this concept of anyone, anywhere can have a really great idea for a TV show and just not have the doors or the means in order to get it in front of the right people. So anyone can submit a 90-second video pitch. You do it, we have it all on our website, unlisted via YouTube. And then now you do have to submit at least 10 pages of the pilot episode of the show. We added that on a few years in, realizing you can have a great idea, but if you can't write it, it's never
Which was exactly my problem, by the way. I thought my idea was good, but I was like, somebody else is going to write this, right?
It's a little, we ran into a few problems in the earlier years of like, oh, these are great ideas, but there's a lot that needs to go into the scripts. So 90-second video pitch and 10-page script sample, has to be a scripted show. We're not doing a docuseries or reality at this point in time. And then through a few rounds of screeners, we narrow it down to the top 10. And then the top 10 do come to the festival and pitch live in front of a panel of industry judges and a audience full of attendees.
Supportive attendees.
Supportive attendees. It is an incredibly
but
supportive
it's still stressful. I'm sorry.
It's still terrifying. The other big change we have made as far as the pitch competition goes from the earlier years is we now hold it on the first day of the festival as opposed to the last day of the festival so that the top 10 finalists do not spend the entire festival just stressed out about it and not enjoying and not going to things. And this way they can pitch pretty much right out of the gate. And then they get to like go to opening night party and go to panels and hang out and really start to form their community during the festival. I also this year added in a couple of conversations that were just for them, which was really fun and cool. But the winner and runner up pretty much have always gotten mentorship, and then we set them up on pitch meetings with our studio network partners. Since COVID and the advent of Zoom, I've really built the program to be all year long, and I work with all 10 finalists for the entire year. So we do monthly Zooms with special guests where I bring on an industry guest, a showrunner, an executive, a producer, whatnot, just to do hour and a half roundtables where the finalists can ask them any questions, get advice, hear their history. And then I have started working with, funny enough, one of our past finalists. Her name is Rika, and we have put together a mentorship program where all the finalists are also paired with a mid-level mentor. So the people that are just a few steps above them, creative execs, writers, producers, that can really like help shepherd them into the next level of their careers, give them advice as we're, making their pitches longer and help develop their projects. And then really setting all of the finalists up with meetings and introducing them to showrunners and just getting them honestly out there as much as possible. And it's one of my favorite things that I do.
Yeah. I will say that for purely selfish reasons, I think the best thing, I mean, the program itself is obviously the objectively, I think, best thing you can do for these finalists. But I think from selfish reasons, the best thing is moving it to the start of the festival. Because as you said, they're building a community, but like they're also, anyone who's heard them pitch, they're hearing feedback from people. They're getting, most of them, I think pretty much everybody is getting, applauded by people. And so it makes them feel good, even if they didn't win, but also it's not hanging over their head for 4 days. I was the last person to pitch in the round. And I don't know if it was alphabetical. I don't remember why, but it ended up that way. And I didn't want to watch anybody else pitch because I was too nervous. And so I was hanging out in, I guess, the Stephen F. Austin bar.
I actually very much have a memory, not of whatever you're about to say, but of the finalists in the bar waiting to go into the ballroom and talking to you. Like,
I'm sorry, but I blacked out. I don't remember that.
I remember like years later, I told Emily, like, Danielle was in the first pitch competition. She was like, she was like, you were like, and I remember it very clearly. Like, I was more in that room. I wasn't in the ballroom during pitching. I was but it was Stephen F's bar.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing that I do remember is that Wilson Bethel, from who I knew vaguely because I covered Heart of Dixie at the time I was working in journalism, wandered in, was like, what's happening in here? And then came and sat and watched us pitch. And he was the only one I could see when I stood up to pitch. And I was like, oh no. So that was fun and stressful. But I mean, whatever. I think it was a good introduction for me in the sense of like, it got me to your festival. So that was great. So I don't know that I would have been able to cover it as press that year. And then who knows how it would have functioned later. So I was like, it worked itself out in the way that it should have, but I hate public speaking and that was not fun. But for everybody else.
That pitch competition is why we are here right now.
Sure.
If you hadn't entered, who knew? Who knows?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's not why I have this podcast, but sure.
Well, the reason we are here right now. All three of us are here together. Yeah, no, it's the reason.
Emily's not trying to take credit for your podcast.
There's nothing to take credit. I'm doing this because I'm not actually working in journalism. Like is that a credit or is that like, oh, you messed up your life? Whatever. Who's to say?
We're all
who's to say?
We're all doing great work.
Well, I'm glad you ended on that note. I was waiting for Em is so positive at all times. And when I try to say things like that, I sound sarcastic, but you are doing great work. For those of you who have listened to and or watched Made Possible by Pop Culture for a while now, first of all, I have to say thank you. But also, what I'm about to say. I like to leave these episodes with where you can find the things that were discussed within so that you can experience them for yourselves. So to that end, I also keep forgetting to give the legal disclaimer, and I'm going to do that now and hope we can just retroactively use it across all of episodes from season 2 that I forgot to say it in. None of the places I'm about to list are paying me to list them. I'm doing that so that I can save you the Google search and just give you an easier time to find these things. Nobody's giving me any ad money. No one's even comping my personal subscription to these services. Maybe they'll do that later, but as of now, this is out of the goodness of my heart. And similarly, this is where these things are available as of now, the recording date of this podcast. Now, the publication date, honestly, a couple days after recording. So we know streamers like to take things off of their services. Contracts end. Nothing is forever. Consider physical media. That said, if you found this podcast quickly, these things are probably still where I say they are. If you're here days, weeks, months after that publication date, which is right next to the title, don't hold it against me if they're not. All of that being said, let's start with Kate's past pop culture influence, which is I Love Lucy, or more specifically, season 4 of I Love Lucy. That season and the whole series is available to stream on Paramount+. M's past pop culture influence was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show. That's available to stream on Hulu. Both Em and Kate work for the ATX TV Festival, which is doing season 14 live and in person in downtown Austin, Texas, which I don't think we actually said where it was happening during the conversation. So downtown Austin, Texas, May 29th through June 1st, 2025. They're doing a big Leftovers reunion. So if you want to watch that show in preparation for the festival, it's streaming on Max. They're also doing a big Unreal reunion, which is streaming on Netflix. And Kate and Em both answered my question about what show they had kind of a renewed interest in based on past festival experience. So I want to tell you where you can find those as well. Kate picked Euphoria. That is streaming on Max. Em picked Mike Flanagan's horror TV catalog, kind of specifically The Haunting of Hill House, but his whole catalog is available on Netflix. He's also coming back to the festival, so you can catch up on his stuff, then see his panel. If you're interested in learning more about the festival, especially the pitch competition or the programming announcements or the panelists or how to get badges and TV passes, you can go to atxtvfestival.com. Thank you all for listening. I hope you liked this episode. I hope if you liked it, you physically hit that like button, comment, subscribe, follow on social media, tell your friends. We're not done with season 2 yet, so please do come back next week for a brand new episode of Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast.